So MatPat, you're telling me that the Ecoons and the Cores were X-infected parasite hosts this entire time? Are you really expecting me to believe with all this information that Ecoons and the Cores came from SR-388, a Metroid-ridden X-parasite infected planet, then they somehow escaped SR-388 on some unknown ship and crash land onto Zebes during events of Super Metroid or before those events, and then they end up doing nothing for majority of the game, just sitting around, not attacking anything, not infecting anything, just standing around waiting for something to happen. Samus comes along and they decide out of nowhere, why not teach Samus how to use some abilities, and then after that happens, they end up doing nothing again for the rest of the game until the very end where Samus just comes across and saves them, only for them to escape on another unknown ship, or maybe the same unknown ship. Then the events of Metroid Fusion happens, and then they still just end up helping Samus later in the game? You really expect me to believe all that? Well, actually, yes, you did present a lot of information. It was pretty well organized, and for the most part, I did believe you. However, upon doing some further research, I kind of learned that there's a couple of flaws with your theory. And for the most part, there's just a couple of minor obscure thoughts, except for like 2 or 1. I'm just going to go over the mistakes you made, and maybe try to reorganize your theory into something a little bit more plausible with the Metroid series. That being said, let's continue on with this video and roll up that intro. Now the first point I want to bring up is how MatPat said it was crazy that the Decoras and Ecoons can have these crazy abilities that are so crazy that it takes Samus in a power suit to even achieve them.
How could an ostrich creature be able to replicate the exact move that you're only able to do with the help of advanced Chozo tech?
Now for the most part, I did believe MatPat on this point, mostly because it correlated with the Sirius situation. In Metroid Fusion, we hear of a creature named Sirius, a very speedy eel creature. And for the most part, eels are pretty speedy creatures, but once Sirius was infected by the X-parasite, he was able to get that speed to the same level as the speed boost. And for the most part, since the Decoras are based off emus or ostriches, and those animals are naturally speedy also, it just made sense that that natural speed was able to be upgraded to the speed boost. However, among further investigation or research, I learned that this idea was completely false. Because even though MatPat himself said, oh, it's so crazy that these creatures can have these crazy abilities that a suit is required to use, it just so happens that the Chozos were inspired by these creatures to create some of these abilities. The Chozos were inspired by the Decoras and Ecoons to create the Shine Spark, Speed Boost, and Wall Jump. Yeah, that was completely backwards from what MatPat said. Oh well, it's impossible that these creatures can do these crazy abilities that a power suit uses. But in reality, those creatures are the only reason why those upgrades even existed. So the whole idea of the X-parasites infecting the Decoras and Ecoons and giving them these specific abilities is completely out of the question. Another thing I want to point out about MatPat's theory is his idea of how the Decoras and Ecoons even got on Zebes if they were from SR-388.
Meaning that they know how to fly a spaceship. A bizarre ability for native wild creatures. Unless, of course, they're not native in the first place. But that would be crazy, wouldn't it? Well, it's not.
Now, I know it's never been confirmed if the Decoras and Ecoons are natural species on the Zebes, or maybe they came from another planet or anything like that, but what I can tell you is MatPat's suggestion is completely wrong. He suggested that the Decoras and Ecoons came from SR-388 through a random ship, they crash landed onto Zebes, and that crash ship turned out to be the crash ship we see in Super Metroid.
They already had a ship on the planet to begin with. That would mean no. Phantoon's Haunted Wreck. A ship that also happens to be one that Samus restores power to when she defeats Phantoon.
That is completely wrong. It's mostly wrong because the crash ship we see in Super Metroid turns out to be the exact ship the Chozos used to get on Zebes in the first place, and they just abandoned it because, you know, it's wrecked, it's been crashed. And if you want further proof, we see the same exact ship, the crash ship, on Metroid Zero Mission, a game that happened way before the events of Super Metroid, so yeah, that idea is completely debunked. Now, it's kind of understandable how MatPat missed those 2 points, because those 2 points are kind of obscure pieces of information, but I don't understand how he missed these points. Now, MatPat suggested something along the lines of X-parasites within the Decoras and Ecoons are a smart strain and they would follow Samus and help her because she's a Metroid hunter and all that.
Because think about what Samus does. She kills Metroids, the one thing that's able to stop the X. And what self-respecting virus wouldn't attach itself to the predator of its only threat? Especially a smarter strain of the parasite.
Now, I'm not debating that part because, you know, I don't have any proof to debunk that idea. But what I do know is that that idea wouldn't work in Metroid Fusion. Now yeah, it would be a smart idea for a smart strain of X parasites to follow Samus because she destroys Metroids. But inside of Metroid Fusion, Samus has Metroid DNA within her. She's part Metroid. And for the most part, X parasites are really aggravated by Metroids. Heck, that's one of the main reasons why the X parasites inside the entire game of Metroid Fusion even attack Samus. She's the only thing inside the entire sector, besides Sector 0, that has Metroid DNA, and they're always actively aggressive towards her because of the Metroid DNA. So if the Decoras and Ecoons were indeed X-infected hosts, it wouldn't make sense for the Decoras and Ecoons to actively help Samus inside Metroid Fusion. It would make sense in Super Metroid since Samus was her old regular self, but in Metroid Fusion with the Metroid DNA, the Decoras and Ecoons should actively be aggressive towards Samus because of the Metroid DNA. That means the Decoras and Ecoons should have attacked Samus, or the Decoras and Ecoons should have left Samus' ship or destroyed Samus' ship. Yeah, Samus destroys Metroids, but if Samus is also part Metroid, that means the X-Parasites shouldn't be able to be trustworthy towards Samus herself. Now this is my final point. I don't understand how he missed this, how MatPat missed this piece of crucial information. But basically, Adam Malkovich, the AI we see in Metroid Fusion, confirmed that the Decoras and Ecoons were not infected. They were healthy biosigns. Even though MatPat said, oh, the Decoras and Ecoons could, trick Samus because Samus is a sucker for cute pets.
This franchise has gone out of its way to establish that she has a history of defending non-endemic creatures regardless of the risks that they pose to a planet.
You can't really trick an AI, especially an AI like Adam Malkovich. He actively scanned the entire sector for healthy biosigns, and he found them within the Decoras and Ecoons because they're healthy biosigns. And he even sent Samus out there to find these healthy biosigns, and she does find them, and it turns out to be the Decoras and Ecoons. And once Samus finds the Decoras and Ecoons, they go run off and find Samus' ship. And then again, Adam scans them again to confirm that they're healthy biosigns to let them in the ship, and he says that they're clean and healthy. They're healthy biosigns. If they're healthy, they're not X-infected. And that's like the biggest piece of information that I got to disprove MatPat's theory of, oh, they were X-infected hosts the entire time. Because really, you can't lie to an AI that can actively scan for healthy or unhealthy biosigns. It just kind of debunks the whole thing. So with that being said, a lot of MatPat's points were kind of debunked, but does that mean his entire theory is completely out the window? Not necessarily. You can tweak his theory a little bit to make it more believable within the Metroid series. So this is my idea. What if the Decoons and Decoras were infected by an X-Parasite? Maybe that the Decoras and Decoons are carriers. They're not being infected by the actual symptoms or being actually influenced by the X-Parasites. They just have a dormant or a weak strain of the X-Parasite within them. When it comes to germs and all that in the real world, a carrier would be someone who carries a weakened or a dormant version of a disease within them and could spread it around willingly or unwillingly, but they are not affected by any of the symptoms. A very famous case would be Typhoid Mary. Basically, it was a person who had typhoid within her. She was a maid and she was cooking and cleaning, but she was infecting everything and everybody she worked with typhoid and just spread like crazy. Even though she wasn't affected by the symptoms, she still had it within her. And that's what I believe the Decoras and Ecoons have. They're carrying a dormant or weakened version of the X-Parasites within them, but they're not being affected by any of the symptoms. They're not being aggressive towards Samus because they're not getting infected by the X-Parasites. And it would explain a couple of things, like why didn't the X-Parasites attempt to infect the Decoras and Ecoons, and how were they able to run to Samus' ship without getting infected? Because they already have the disease within them. It's just not active. They're not being infected by any of the symptoms. It makes perfect sense, really. Now, I don't know when they would get infected. I mean, I don't think they've been infected since Super Metroid, because really, if X-Parasites were inside Super Metroid, they would have infected that entire planet in no time. But I would assume they got infected somewhere near the events of Metroid Fusion. Once all the crazy stuff happened inside Metroid Fusion, the X-Parasites didn't attempt to infect the Decoras and Ecoons because they already had the disease with them. Why is the Decoras and Ecoons so happy and friendly towards Samus? Because even though she has Metroid DNA, the X-Parasites within the Decoras and Ecoons aren't reacting to it because it's dormant or weakened. So the Decoras and Ecoons would just be their normal selves. And it would be a cool twist near the end of Metroid Fusion or like the beginning of the next Metroid game. So that's my twist on his theory. The Decoras and Ecoons aren't X-Parasites, they just carry dormant versions and they're just carriers of the X-Parasite disease. But what do you guys think? Do you have any other opinions about MatPat's theory or my theory? Whether the Decoras and Ecoons should be X-Parasite hosts, whether the Decoras and Ecoons aren't affected at all, maybe something you have your own idea for? Whatever you got, feel free to put it in the comment section. And if you like this video, feel free to share it among all your friends. It could be your Metroid friends, it could be your whole family. If you have some sort of distant relative that likes Metroid, feel free to show them this video. And if you like Metroid content in general, feel free to like and favorite and subscribe to this channel because I do plan on making more Metroid videos. That being said, I'm the Metroid Trainer. I hope you enjoyed this video because I'll be seeing you next time.